The night was heavy with silence, broken only by the distant cry of metal in the wind. The world had ended years ago, leaving broken fences, burned machines, and empty houses behind in this ruined land. Only a few survivors walked, hiding from hunger, hiding from each other, hiding from the dark. David was one of them. He lived alone on the edge of the wasteland, inside a small shelter made of wood, wire, and old steel. Every day was the same for him. Wake early, search for food, fix tools, guard his fence. He trusted no one, because trust was the first step to death in this world. That night, as the sun fell and the sky turned red, David walked back to his shelter with a sack of dry roots and water. He was tired, his body covered in dust and scars. But then he stopped. Something moved near the fence. A soft shadow against the light of the fire he had set. At first, he thought, it was another scavenger. Or maybe a thief. He gripped the knife on his belt and waited. The shadow grew clearer, and soon he saw them, a woman and a small child. Standing just outside the broken fence, the woman's hair was long, falling in dirty golden strands. Her skin pale but shining faintly under the moonlight. Her clothes were torn, stained with dust and blood. Her arms were thin, trembling, but she still stood tall. Next to her, holding tightly to her leg, was a little girl, maybe 5 years old. Her eyes were wide with fear, and her lips were dry from thirst. David narrowed his eyes, his grip firm on the knife. He had seen many tricks before. Sometimes, a woman with a child was only bait behind her. Men with weapons would wait for the right moment, but as he looked closer, there was no one else. Only this woman and this child, staring at him with silent desperation. The woman raised her hand slowly, as if to show she carried no weapon. Her voice was soft but clear, though heavy with exhaustion. "Please," she whispered, "just one night. Feed my daughter." She paused, her eyes filled with shame. "I will give myself to you." David froze. He had heard many bargains in this world, but none cut him like this one. The woman's eyes did not carry seduction, only fear and hopelessness. She was not offering because she wanted. She was offering because she had no other choice. The little girl pulled on her mother's dress and whispered something, too soft to hear. Her small hands clung like claws. Afraid to let go, David looked at the child's thin frame, her hollow cheeks, the way her legs shook from weakness. The girl was starving. The fire cracked behind him, throwing light on his face. The woman looked at him, waiting. Her eyes were tired. But behind the fear, there was also strength. She was ready to sell her own body to keep her daughter alive. David's chest tightened. He remembered another time, long ago, before the war. Before the world had turned to ash, he remembered his sister, young, fragile, crying for food in a dark room. He remembered being too weak to help her, and he remembered the day she did not wake up. His hand shook slightly as he lowered the knife. He took a slow step forward, his eyes locked on the woman. "What's your name?" he asked, his voice rough from years of silence. The woman hesitated. "Lyra," she whispered. "This is my daughter." Her hand rested gently on the child's head. The girl stared at him with big, glowing eyes. The kind of eyes that did not look fully human. David noticed it at once. The shine in her eyes, the faint glow in her skin. Not fully human, not fully alien either. Something in between. His breath caught. He had heard of such children before, but never seen one. Lyra saw his reaction and quickly stepped in front of the girl. "Please," she said again, her voice breaking. "She has done nothing wrong. I don't care what you think of me, but she must eat." The fire's light flickered on David's scarred face. He could see her hands trembling, but still open. Not a fighter's hands, but a mother's hands. Hands ready to give away everything, just to save the small life hiding. Behind her, the wind howled through the empty machines around them. The night felt colder. David's mind raced. He could turn them away, keep his food, his water. His silence, that was the safe choice, the smart choice. But as he looked at the girl again, he knew he would never sleep if he left her to starve. Slowly, he knelt down, placing his sack on the ground between them. He untied the rope, pulled out a piece of dry bread, and set it on the sand. Then he pushed it forward, toward the child. His voice was low but steady. "Let her eat, Lyra's." Eyes widened, her mouth opening slightly in shock. She looked at the bread, then back at David. She did not move, as if she thought this was some cruel trick, but the girl, too hungry to doubt, rushed forward. She grabbed the bread with both hands and bit into it, crumbs falling down her chin. Her eyes closed as she chewed, a soft sound of relief escaping her lips. Lyra's hand shook as she pulled her daughter close again. Tears filled her glowing eyes. She looked at David, confused, afraid, and hopeful. All at once, she whispered again, her voice breaking, You don't want me?" David stared at her for a long moment. The firelight flickered in his eyes, showing both pain and strength. Finally, he shook his head. "No," he said simply. "Not you, only her. She eats first." The fire burned low, shadows dancing against the broken fence. Lyra sat close to her daughter, who was still chewing the last crumbs of bread, her little hands holding each piece like treasure. David sat across from them, silent, his knife resting by his side, his eyes watching the flames, not them. For a long time, no one spoke. Only the crackle of fire and the soft sound of the child eating filled the air. The night was thick, heavy, like it was holding its breath. Finally, Lyra broke the silence. Her voice was steady, but behind it was fear and shame. "You didn't take what I offered," she said slowly. Her eyes studied him, confused, searching for the hidden cost. "What do you want instead?" "Everyone wants something." David did not look at her. He turned a piece of wood in his hand, sharpening the edge with a small blade. "Not everyone," he said simply. His voice was calm, but it carried weight, the weight of someone who had seen too much. Lyra frowned, her brows tightening. She did not trust this answer. In her world, kindness was always a mask, and behind it was hunger, power, or cruelty. "Don't lie to me," she whispered. "Men always want something. If not food, then my body. If not my body, then my daughter's future. So what is it? What's your price?" David lifted his eyes to hers. They were sharp, tired eyes, scarred by years of loss. He held her gaze without fear, without greed. "My price," he said slowly, "is nothing. I only want you both to live through this night." Lyra's heart pounded. She wanted to believe him, but belief was dangerous. Belief had gotten her beaten before, chased before, betrayed before. Her grip on her daughter tightened, as if protecting her from invisible chains. The little girl leaned against her mother's arm, eyes half closed now that food filled her stomach. Her voice was soft, almost a dream. "Mama, safe now." Lyra kissed her forehead, but her own eyes stayed on David. She whispered back, "We don't know yet." David heard, but said nothing. He pulled another piece of bread from the sack and placed it on the ground between them. "Tomorrow," he said, "you can decide where to go, but for tonight, eat, rest." Lyra hesitated, staring at the bread. She wanted to snatch it, but something stopped her. Instead, she asked, "Why are you helping us?" You saw her eyes, her skin. You know what she is. You know what I am. David's face did not change. "I know enough," he said. "She's a child, hungry. That's all I see." Those words struck her harder than any weapon for so long. People had only seen the glow in her daughter's eyes, the alien blood in her veins. They saw danger, curse, or something to exploit. Never just a child, never just hungry. Her throat closed with emotion, but she did not show it. She could not yet. Still, she pressed forward, her voice sharp now, testing him. If you don't want me, then what if I refuse to leave tomorrow? What if we stay? Will you still want nothing? Will you still give? David stared at her for a long time. The fire painted lines on his face, shadows across his scars. Finally, he leaned forward, his voice low. I don't bargain with mothers and children. I don't take from those who already lost too much. He paused, his eyes flicking to the child now asleep against Lyra's arm. You can stay the night. No more promises, no more trades. Just stay. Lyra's hands trembled. She wanted to argue, to fight, to uncover the trap, but his tone was steady, unshaken. There was no hunger in his eyes, no secret lust, no greed, only something she could not name. Something she had almost forgotten: decency. Her voice grew softer, almost broken. You don't understand. One offered myself because it's all I have left. I cannot hunt. I cannot fight. I cannot trade. All I have is me. David's jaw clenched. He looked into the flames. Not at her. You are wrong, he said, his voice carrying a sudden edge. You have her. He nodded toward the sleeping girl. That is worth more than you know. That is enough reason to keep moving, to keep fighting. Don't ever say all you have is yourself. The words hit her harder than she expected. For a moment, her chest ached, as if some wall inside her cracked. She held her daughter tighter, tears filling her eyes before she could stop them. Silence fell again, heavier than before. Lyra sat there, holding the child, her heart torn between fear and something new. Something she had not felt in years. Hope, but still, she did not trust it, not yet. She watched him as he worked by the fire, sharpening tools, repairing a broken strap, acting as if her offer had never been made. It confused her, made her restless. If he didn't want her body, then what did he truly want? The bargain was broken, the rules of her world shattered, and for the first time, Lyra feared not for her safety, but for her heart. Because if this man was different, if he was truly honest, then she might start to believe in something dangerous. She might start to believe in him. The night stretched on, cold and endless. The fire burned low, painting red light across the dirt, the fence, and the tired faces around it. The little girl had eaten the bread, but her small stomach still rumbled, and her eyes still searched for more, David noticed, though Lyra tried to hide it. Without a word, David reached into his sack again. Pulling out a bundle wrapped in old cloth, he placed it on the ground, untied the knot, and revealed dried meat, a small tin of beans, a cracked metal cup filled with water. For him, this was not much, just a day's meal, maybe less, but for them, it was everything. The girl's eyes lit up, her tiny hands reached forward. But Lyra held her back. Her mother's voice was low, sharp with suspicion. Why? Why give us more? You will have nothing left. David looked at her, his expression calm. I have enough for tonight, he said. She needs it more. Lyra's chest tightened. Every man she had met in the wasteland wanted a price for kindness. Food was never free, yet here was this stranger, dividing his survival into pieces and handing them away. The girl whimpered softly, tugging at her mother's arm, her eyes fixed on the food. Lyra hesitated, then finally let her go. The child hurried forward, sitting close to the fire, her face glowing in the flickering light. David placed a small strip of dried meat in her hand, then poured beans into a rusty tin plate. The girl ate quickly, stuffing food into her mouth. But David gently reached out, his hand steady. Slow down, he said softly. Chew, or you'll choke. His voice carried no command, only concern. The girl froze for a second, staring at him with wide glowing eyes, then nodded. For the first time that night, she slowed her chewing, copying the careful way he moved his own jaw when he bit into a piece of meat. Lyra watched in silence. Her daughter, her precious child, had spoken to no one in weeks. Not since the last time someone tried to take her away. Yet here she was, listening, obeying this man she had just met. A stranger, but somehow not a threat. David passed the metal cup to the girl. She drank, spilling water on her chin when she finished. She looked up at him and whispered one word, so soft Lyra almost missed it. Thanks. The single word pierced the silence. David's eyes softened. A shadow of something long buried flickering across his face memory. He nodded once, almost. Too slowly, as if he wasn't sure how to react. You're welcome, he said, his voice low. Lyra's heart twisted. Her daughter had not spoken that word to anyone in months. And yet, here she was, offering it freely to this scarred man by the fire. The girl leaned closer, drawn by warmth, by safety. She sat just within David's shadow, eating carefully as he showed her how to break bread into smaller bites. Her little fingers copied his movements, clumsy but eager. It looked almost like a father teaching a child. Lyra's breath caught. She wanted to pull her daughter back, to remind her that trust was dangerous, but her body would not move. Her heart would not allow it. Instead, she only whispered, almost to herself, she has never trusted anyone so quickly. David did not answer. He only glanced at her once, then back at the girl. It was not his place to speak of such things, but in his chest, a weight shifted. He remembered again the sister he had lost, her small hands. Her laughter before the war. He remembered how she too had once trusted him, depended on him, and how he had failed her. He shook the memory away, focusing on the present. He could not change the past. But maybe, just maybe, he could do something. Here, tonight, the meal ended slowly, the girl's small body leaning against the warmth of the fire. Her eyes heavy with sleep, she tried to stay awake, blinking hard, as if afraid the food might disappear if she closed her eyes. But soon her head drooped, and she rested against her mother's side, full for the first time in days. Lyra stroked her hair gently, her eyes never leaving David. You could have taken me, she whispered, her voice rough with emotion. You could have turned us away. You could have kept your food. But you didn't. David's face was unreadable, but his words were steady. I don't take what isn't offered freely, he said, and I don't leave children to starve. Lyra wanted to argue, to call it a trick, a mask, but her daughter's peaceful breathing silenced her doubts. She looked down at the sleeping child, and her heart ached with something she feared to name hope. The night grew colder. David threw another piece of wood into the fire. Sparks rising into the dark sky. The sound of the crackling flames filled the silence between them. They were strangers still, worlds apart, but in that moment, with a shared meal and a sleeping child, the distance felt smaller. Lyra wrapped her arms around her daughter, her eyes heavy with exhaustion, before sleep took her. She whispered into the night. Not sure if David could hear. Maybe. This world still has men like you. David sat awake long after they had drifted into sleep, his knife in hand, his eyes scanning the shadows beyond the fence. The wasteland was never safe, but for tonight. Inside this broken circle of firelight, two strangers and a child had found something rare. Not safety, not yet, but the beginning of it. The fire burned low, its light soft and tired. The little girl was already asleep, curled against her mother's chest, breathing slow and steady, her face calm for the first time in many nights. But Lyra could not rest. Her eyes stayed open, glowing faintly in the dark, always moving between David and the shadows beyond the fence. She knew the wasteland too well. Kindness was never free, and safety never real. Men gave food only when they wanted something greater in return. She had seen women trust too soon, only to be broken. She had sworn never to let it happen to her. Not while her daughter still breathed. David sat by the fire, quiet. He did not look at her, did not move toward her. Instead, he worked, his scarred hands repairing a broken strap, sharpening a tool, feeding the flames with small branches. Every action calm, steady, like a man used to silence. Lyra's suspicion grew with every passing minute. She waited for the shift, the sudden change when his mask would drop. She waited for the hungry glance, the demand, the trap, but it never came. Instead, he kept his distance when the little girl coughed in her sleep. David glanced at her, concern flickering in his eyes, but then he looked away, giving them space. The action surprised Lyra more than any weapon could. She whispered into the night, testing him, "You're not like the others." David did not lift his eyes. His voice was calm, low. "Others don't matter," he said. "The only thing that matters is making it through the night." His words carried no poetry, no charm, only truth, and that truth unsettled her. Lyra tightened her hold on her daughter, feeling the child's warmth against her chest. The girl trusted him already. She could see it, but Lyra could not. Trust was weakness, and weakness meant death. Still, something in her heart shifted, no matter how hard she fought it. The wind howled outside the fence, carrying with it the sound of distant metal groaning. Far away, a howl rose into the night beast. Or machine, it was impossible to tell. Lyra's body tensed. But David did not move. He only listened, his hand resting on the knife at his side. His eyes never wavered, always fixed on the fire. Calm even in the face of threat. That calm unnerved her more than violence would have. It was the calm of a man who had nothing left to lose, or maybe of a man who had already lost everything. The night dragged on. Lyra stayed awake, her body aching with exhaustion. But every time her eyes began to close, she forced them open again. She could not allow herself to fall asleep. Not with a stranger so near. She studied him, every movement, every shadow across his face. He had scars along his jaw, his arms, his hands, marks of survival, of violence. Yet his eyes carried no hunger, no cruel spark, only a heaviness, like a man carrying ghosts. Finally, she spoke again, her voice sharper, desperate to cut through the silence. "Why? Why are you doing this? Why give food? Why share fire? If not to take something from me?" David's hands stilled. For the first time, he looked at her fully. His gaze steady and strong. "I told you already," he said, his voice firm. "I don't bargain with mothers and children. I don't take from the desperate." Lyra's lips trembled with frustration. She wanted to shout, to accuse, to prove him false. But her daughter's sleeping face silenced her anger. The child's soft breathing, peaceful at last, was proof that for now his words were real. "Still," she whispered, almost pleading. "No one is like that anymore." David's gaze dropped to the flames again, his voice quieter this time. "Then maybe that's the problem." Lyra fell silent, her heart beating hard. The answer was too simple, too honest. And honesty was the most dangerous thing of all. Hours passed, the fire burned lower, the cold creeping closer. David never moved from his place, never reached for her, never broke the invisible line between them. Instead, he sat awake, keeping watch like a soldier on guard, protecting not only himself, but strangely, her and the child too. Lyra's eyes grew heavier. Despite her will, she fought sleep, her body trembling with the effort. But as the stars wheeled above, exhaustion won. Her head dipped forward, her body curling protectively around her daughter before she drifted away. Her last thought was one of fear, not of him, but of herself. Fear that she might begin to believe him. When dawn came, the first light painted the wasteland in pale gold. Lyra woke with a start, her heart pounding. She looked quickly at her daughter, still sleeping peacefully. Then at David. He was where he had been all night, sitting upright, his knife across his lap, eyes scanning the horizon, awake, silent, watchful. The surprise hit her hard. He had not touched her, had not demanded, had not broken the fragile trust of the fire. Instead, he had guarded them while they slept, a stranger keeping watch over. Two souls he owed nothing to. Her lips parted, but no words came. For the first time in years, she did not know how to speak to a man. Not as a bargain, not as a warning, but as someone who might be different. And that thought terrified her more than the wasteland itself. The sun rose higher with each passing day, burning the wasteland in harsh light. For most survivors, days meant only hunger and fear. But for Lyra and her daughter, something new began to grow. It started small, one meal, one night of safety, but slowly, like cracks in stone, trust began to break through. David never asked questions. He never demanded, never pressed them for answers. He hunted when he could, brought back roots, small animals, or sometimes nothing at all. But whatever he found, he always divided it into three: a share for him, a share for Lyra, and a share for the little girl. At first, Lyra refused. She pushed the food away, shaking her head. "I cannot take what is not mine," she whispered. "I have nothing to give in return." But David only placed the food back in front of her. His voice calm. "You have her," he said simply, nodding toward the girl. "That is enough." Lyra never knew how to answer. The words cut deep because in her heart, she feared he was wrong. She feared her daughter's strange blood made her a curse. Not a gift, but each time David spoke those words, something inside her loosened. The girl changed fastest of all. In the beginning, she spoke only in whispers, hiding behind her mother's legs, her glowing eyes full of fear. But soon, laughter returned to her lips, small at first, then louder, brighter. She followed David as he worked, curious about his tools, his fire, his quiet strength. Once David showed her how to tie a knot. Her little fingers fumbled with the rope, but he was patient, his scarred hands guiding hers gently. When she finally managed it, she smiled wide, her voice ringing with pride. "Look, Mama, I did it." Lyra's heart swelled at the sound. It had been so long since she heard her daughter's voice filled with joy. She looked at David, and for the first time, she did not see a stranger. She saw someone who gave her child back a piece of childhood. But with each moment of softness came fear. At night, when her daughter slept, Lyra sat awake by the fire, her eyes on David. She wanted to ask him why he risked sharing, why he cared when he had no reason, but the words never left her lips. She was afraid of the answer, afraid that kindness was only another mask. One evening, as the sky turned red with dust, Lyra finally spoke. "You could have had me," she said, her voice sharp but trembling. "You could have taken what I offered that first night, and no one would have stopped you." David was mending a torn strap. His hand steady, he looked up slowly, his eyes meeting hers without hesitation. "I told you before," he said. "I don't take from those who have nothing left to give." Lyra's anger rose, not at him, but at herself. Her voice cracked. "But I had something to give myself. That is all I had. You should have taken it." Her words echoed against the fence, heavy with shame. For so long, she had believed her only worth was her body, her only power the bargain of survival. But David shook his head, his voice firm. "You are more than that, Lyra, and he pointed to the child sleeping nearby. She deserves to see her mother as more than that too." The silence that followed was heavy. Lyra's eyes burned, tears falling despite her will. She turned away, pressing her hand over her mouth to hide the sound. Her daughter stirred in her sleep, and Lyra pulled her close, whispering soft promises. David did not comfort her. He did not move. He only fed the fire, letting the silence stretch, giving her space to break without shame. The next day, something shifted. Lyra no longer refused food. When David offered a piece of meat, she took it without protest. though her eyes still searched his face for hidden meaning when he spoke to her daughter, showing her how to sharpen sticks or catch water in an old tin. She no longer pulled the child away. She watched instead, her heart torn between fear and gratitude. Days bled into nights, and nights into days. The wasteland outside the fence was the same cruel, hungry, dangerous, but inside, something fragile was being built. Not safety, not yet, but trust. One evening, as stars pricked the black sky, Lyra sat by the fire. Her daughter asleep in her lap, her voice was quiet, almost broken. "Why help us?" she asked again, her eyes fixed on the flames. "You could survive longer without us. You know that?" David's jaw tightened. He looked into the fire for a long moment before speaking. "Because once, someone helped me when I had nothing," he said softly, "and I didn't deserve it either." Lyra turned to him, shocked. His eyes were far away. Seeing something beyond the flames, he did not say more. But the weight in his voice told her enough. He carried ghosts, same as her, and maybe, just maybe, this was his way of making peace with them that night as she lay awake. Listening to her daughter's gentle breathing, Lyra realized something terrifying. She was beginning to believe him. And belief, in a world like this, was the most dangerous risk of all. The nights had grown colder. David added more wood to the fire, sparks rising into the dark sky. Lyra sat across from him, her daughter asleep between them, her small body wrapped in a torn blanket. For days now, they had shared food, shared silence, shared uneasy trust. But tonight, the weight on Lyra's chest was too heavy to keep inside. Her glowing eyes followed the flames, but her thoughts were far away. Every laugh her daughter gave, every bite of food she took was a miracle. But miracles always came with a cost, and David did not know the cost yet. Lyra's voice broke the silence. Soft but sharp. "You should not have helped us." David looked up, surprised. His knife paused in his hand, the blade half sharpened. "Why?" he asked, his tone calm. "You and your daughter needed food, needed shelter." Lyra shook her head, her jaw tight. "No," she whispered. "We needed more than that. We needed hiding. We needed safety from the ones who will come for us." Her words hung in the air, heavy with danger. David leaned forward slightly, his eyes narrowing. "Who?" For a long moment, she did not answer. Her hands trembled as she pulled the blanket higher over her daughter, covering the glow of the child's skin. Finally, her voice cracked. "They call us half-bloods, monsters, not human, not alien, cursed by both sides." David's jaw tightened. He had guessed something before, the glow in the child's eyes, the faint shine in Lyra's skin, but hearing it spoken aloud was different. It gave shape to the fear that had lingered unspoken between them. Lyra's eyes filled with tears. "She fought to hide. I was taken once, years ago," she said, her voice hollow. "Taken by soldiers who wanted to use me, not kill me. When they found out I carried a child, they cast me out, said she would be an abomination, a weapon or a curse. Since then, we've run, always hiding, always hunted." Her hands tightened around her daughter. "I offered myself to you that night because I thought it was all I could trade. But the truth is, I have nothing anyone wants, only danger, only shame. Wherever we go, people fear us. Some try to kill us. Others try to take her away, and sooner or later, they will find us again." The fire snapped, breaking the silence. David's eyes were steady on her. He did not flinch, did not look away. Instead, he asked, his voice low, "What about you? What are you?" Lyra's lips trembled. "I am neither," she whispered. "Not human, not alien. My blood is broken, my body weaker than theirs. But I fight for her, because she is all I have." Her voice cracked with despair. "She is the reason I still breathe, The reason I have not given up. Every night I pray I can keep her safe, but I know I cannot do it forever. One day they will come, and I will not be enough to stop them." David sat in silence, his hand tightening around the knife in his lap. He knew the wasteland was cruel. He knew men hunted for power, for blood, for survival. But hearing her truth was heavier than he expected. For a long time, he said nothing. Then, finally, his voice cut through the fire's crackle. "You think she is a curse," he said. "But I see a child, no different from the sister I once lost. And you," his eyes locked on hers, steady and sharp. "You are not broken, Lyra. You are a mother. And that is the strongest thing left in this world." Lyra's breath caught. Her eyes burned with tears she could no longer hold back. No one had ever spoken to her like that. Not as a monster, not as a tool, but as a person, a mother. She wanted to deny it, to argue, but her daughter stirred in her sleep, her small glowing hand slipping out from the blanket to rest against Lyra's arm. Warm, alive, proof of love, not curse. Lyra's chest ached. For the first time in years, she let the tears fall freely. "They will come," she whispered, her voice breaking. "They always come. If you stay with us, you will die too." David's eyes did not waver. "Maybe," he said, his voice calm, steady, "but if I send you away, you will die without me. And I have lived with too much death already." Lyra's heart pounded. She wanted to scream at him, to tell him he was a fool. But in his eyes, she saw no fear, no hesitation, only a man who had already chosen. The fire burned low, the night heavy around them for the first time since the world had fallen. Lyra felt the weight of her secret lift. She had spoken the truth, and the man across the fire had not turned from her. Instead, he had looked at her like she was human, like she still belonged to this broken world. Her daughter slept soundly, safe for one more night, and Lyra, though her heart trembled with fear, felt something she thought she had lost forever: hope. Morning light spilled across the wasteland. The broken world looked no softer in daylight, only more empty, more ruined. But inside the fence, by the small fire's ashes, there was something new: the sound of a child laughing. The little girl chased a moth that had wandered too close to the flames, her glowing eyes wide with wonder. Her laughter echoed against the silence of the wasteland. Fragile yet alive, Lyra watched her, her lips curved in the smallest smile. Though her eyes were still heavy with worry, David stood nearby, repairing the fence with rough wire. His hands moved with purpose, tightening, fixing, making strong what had been broken. Lyra finally asked, her voice low but sharp, "Why do you keep doing this?" David glanced at her, then back at the fence. "What do you mean?" "You act like we belong here," she said. "You repair the fence as if you're making a place for us, not just for yourself. You act as if we are staying, not leaving." David's hands stilled. He turned, his eyes steady on hers. "Because you are staying," he said simply. The words struck her harder than any blade. She shook her head quickly, fear flashing in her eyes. "No, no, we cannot. If we stay, they will find us. You don't understand, David. They always find us. And when they do, they will kill you too." David walked closer, his voice calm but firm. "Lyra, I have lived alone for too long. This place has been nothing but silence. I thought that was survival. But now I see it was only waiting to die." Your daughter's laughter, it reminded me what living sounds like. This place is empty without voices. I don't want silence anymore. Lyra's throat closed, her eyes burned with tears. "You would throw away your life for us." "No," David said, shaking his head. "I would give my life with you, not for you. There's a difference. Alone, my life means nothing, but together. Maybe it means something again. Lyra pressed her hand against her mouth, her body trembling. No one had ever spoken to her like this. No one had ever chosen her without a price. Her heart wanted to believe him, but fear clawed at her ribs. She looked at her daughter, still chasing the moth with joy. She whispered, "If you're wrong, she will suffer." David's voice softened. "If I'm wrong, at least she will know what family feels like. Even if it's only for a short time, even if the world comes for us tomorrow, she will know she was loved. That's more than most children in this world ever get." Lyra's tears spilled over. Her hands shook as she knelt, holding her daughter close. The girl laughed. Not knowing the weight of the words above her head, Lyra kissed her hair, whispering, "She deserves everything. And I have given her nothing but running, maybe." "Maybe you are right, David," for the first time. She let herself imagine it, a place to stop, a place to rest, not just another night of bargaining, not another escape, but a home. David returned to his work, reinforcing the fence, preparing. The fire pit, every motion said the same thing. This is ours now, as the sun fell again. Painting the sky in blood-red streaks, they sat by the fire together. The little girl leaned against David's arm, tired from play. Her glowing eyes half closed. Lyra watched, her heart torn between fear and warmth. He had already become something she never meant to allow a father to her child. Her voice broke the silence. Quiet, but heavy with meaning. "Maybe we stay." Just for a while, David nodded once, his face calm but his eyes bright. "Then stay. No more bargains, no more trades, not just one night. But as long as it takes, we'll make this place a home." Lyra's heart pounded. The words were dangerous, reckless, but for the first time in years, they felt right. The fire burned higher, casting their faces in warm light for a fragile moment. It felt as if the wasteland outside had vanished, as if the broken world could not touch them here. A man, a woman, and a child, strangers, yet already something like family. But beyond the fence, in the darkness, shadows moved. A faint glimmer of metal eyes caught the last of the sun. Figures waited, silent, watching. Hunters of half-bloods, seekers of secrets. Drawn by the glow of a child's eyes, Lyra's arms tightened around her daughter. Unaware of the danger at the edge of the night, David sharpened his knife by the fire. Ready, without knowing why, the wasteland had not forgotten them, and soon it would come knocking. But for now, beside the circle of firelight, they were more than survivors. They were a family, and in a world of ash and silence, that was the greatest rebellion of all.